Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Rob here, and I'm doing something today that I haven't done in a pretty long time, which is really exciting. Just a very, very quick intro here before the actual meat and substance of the video begins. What I'm doing today is sharing a small clip or an excerpt from a podcast I did recently with a good friend of mine and a friend of the channel. And, we've done a lot of stuff, both on my channel and on his channel. Of course, his name is Andres from his channel AndresRestart. And we recently did a pretty long 1 hour podcast discussing Mario and comparing Mario Galaxy to Mario Odyssey. And it was a really fun discussion and a lot of views, a lot of support, and people really seemed to enjoy it. But what we also ended up doing before we even made that Mario discussion was we actually just kind of chatted and shot the shit for like almost an hour before we even had the Mario conversation. And it turned out that there was a lot of really good discussion in there. And because Andres was recording that before we actually started the Mario thing, we discussed it and he shared that as a full kind of video conversation on his channel. And there's a lot of good stuff in there. We talked about being, YouTubers and making Nintendo content, being Nintendo content creators. We talked about Switch 2 stuff. We talked about Zelda stuff and Mario and all sorts of things. And so I thought it would be fun to take a short clip of some of that conversation and share it with you guys here so you can watch it, hopefully enjoy it. And more than anything, if you enjoy it, I really, really hope and I encourage you to go to the full conversation video on his channel, which I'll have linked below in the description and in the pinned comment. Check out his channel, give it a like and support, and just watch the full video conversation as well. So that's what we're doing. This is just a clip. If you like it, please, please, please go support his channel and watch the full video there. And with that, I'm going to shut up and just let you guys enjoy the actual podcast clip itself. Thanks, and bye-bye. So here's the one thing I want to say, and then we maybe can actually do the Mario thing for whatever 30 minutes. But so I haven't brought this up in a video. I had an epiphany a few weeks ago, and I almost sent a tweet about it. And I was like, no, I won't do a tweet because it's too big of a conversation. But the other thing we have to think of that lends to why Nintendo has to be thinking next gen sooner than later is at this point they'd have to start recycling franchises, and if they start recycling franchises like a Mario and a Mario Kart and a Zelda and a Metroid and whatever the case, every recycled franchise that releases on the Switch becomes a franchise that doesn't have a new entry ready for that first 2 years of their next console.
Right.
So they need to start moving franchises into that next generation in the next year or two, right? That's part of... So that's an interesting detail no one's talked about, and I had that epiphany a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so with Breath of the Wild 2 coming out and Splatoon 3 coming out, they're not going to be ready.
It's the perfect swan song.
Right.
Breath of the Wild is the perfect swan song.
So, and that's also why I think 3D Mario is probably being saved for their new hardware. Because, I'm kind of planning a little bit. So there's going to be this discussion we're having now, right? Which isn't necessarily related to 3D. It is related to 3D Mario, but not to the next 3D Mario. I have a next 3D Mario video kind of planned. And it's basically just kind of predicting when we see it. And if you just look at the release, I'm basically telling you my video right here, right? So Mario 64 came out in 1996. Mario Sunshine came out 2002. 6-year gap. Mario Galaxy came out 2007. 5-year gap. Its sequel, I believe, in 2010, 3-year gap. And then 2017, and then 2013 was 3D World. And then 4 years later, Mario Odyssey. And then I have to double check the release date of 3D Land, but you can even argue that's another one, right? So
3D Land, yeah, that would have been, I think, 2011 or 12.
Okay, yeah, and
I think 2012.
So maybe 2012. But you look at those years, right? And we're already in 2022. The largest gap we've ever seen between a 3D Mario release is 6 years. So if we don't see it this year, odds are we're seeing at least an announcement next year.
Yeah.
At least.
I think so. I think, and then there's also, that's a great point, and I agree with you as far as Mario. And that applies to hardware too. In the Switch era, they've been on a 2-year cycle of new hardware revisions.
Right.
So next year becomes 2 years since the OLED. So hopefully it's not a revision. This is where I'm hoping their next announcement is a next-gen piece of hardware. You know, and the thing is, their next hardware, if it's a Switch, it can. I've tried to explain this in a lot of my conversations, and some people have gotten it, some people haven't. Revision and next gen could technically be the same thing if they release another hybrid Switch. Whatever they call it,
it might be
could
a
be seen as
hybrid.
both. Well, yeah. You could both undock it, and then you can undock the portable into another smaller dock.
Yeah, and it's also gonna
yeah,
hybrid, as in hybrid mid-gen refresh, but also next gen at the same time.
Exactly. I mean, it can be the pro equivalent where it improves, it plays Switch games, Switch cartridges, and it will improve them moderately and make them 4K or whatever. But also, the power is so significantly better that the other games that are coming on PS5 and Series X can also release on it. But that could not be run on the current Switch. To me,
Perhaps
and even if they called that thing Switch Pro, to me, it's both. It's a revision that is also a next-gen leap. Which is why I kind of moved my verbiage over the last year into next-gen leap in power.
The name
Not
they've
always
thrown
just
around
Switch
a
2.
lot is Super Switch, you know? And I love
Super Nintendo Switch.
I love the idea of them calling it that. I don't know if they will actually call it that, because that just kind of goes against what Nintendo uses for their naming schemes nowadays, right? Like, I feel like their naming schemes nowadays are more on the nose. You know,
Well,
like
Switch Up is what I've heard, and I think that's a good one. Switch Up.
maybe, yeah,
You know? Like how I mean, granted, Wii U wasn't popular, but going from Wii to Wii U was this weird play on the nomenclature.
yeah.
Switch Up is like a similar concept. So
Yeah, I kind of just hope they just call it Switch 2. Like,
yeah, I'd be fine with that too.
I think you look at what Sony's done, and they pretty much have great success every generation. Their least successful generation was
Still
what,
80
PS3?
million. Yeah.
And it still
Which is
sold
80
like
million.
what, 70, 80 million or something, right?
Yeah, it was huge.
It was huge. And I think a lot of that just has to do with how they brand themselves. They're very consistent. People understand what's happening every generation. But you look at Nintendo, and they're kind of just like, it's like they're starting from scratch every time. Except
that is true. And even Xbox ran into it with Xbox One.
Yeah, and it's confusing. I think if you just stick with numbers, it's fine. Most companies do that, and it works. I mean, heck, Nintendo does it with some of their games, and it works. Like, maybe just that's it.
I will never forget. I don't know, because I know you're not really young, but I know you're about, I don't know, I think you're like 10 or 11 years younger than me.
I was born in 91.
Oh, okay, you're the same age as my wife, so we have a 10-year difference then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because she's 31, I'm 41.
Yeah, I turned 31 in October.
Okay, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, about the same age. So that, 10-year difference. So when the Wii was announced, I remember when the name the Wii, right? So we're talking, when was that? 2004 maybe, I think, or maybe 2005 was when it went from Revolution to the name Wii. And I got a text on my shitty little Nokia phone. I was working as an assistant manager at a Blockbuster, okay, in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I got a text on my little Nokia phone, I think from my younger brother, who was like, he just said Nintendo Wii. He said Wii, and he had to say it sounds like the word Wii, W-E. And I was like, what? I was so shocked, and I hated it too. I was like, that is the dumbest,
I think
weirdest.
you probably just believed your brother was like pulling your chain.
I probably did. It was so confusing. And that wasn't a time where we had smartphones, and it was just such a different time, right? We're talking 2005. So I remember...
I didn't have a job, so I was just like on my computer being like, what is Nintendo thinking? They're all crazy.
Yeah. I'm actually remembering, I was at Blockbuster, but I wasn't at Fort Collins yet. Anyway, I do remember going home, and in like the weeks and months that followed, as everyone, myself included, and the way the internet taught, IGN was the only place to go for anything at this time, Wasn't a lot of video content out there. And the whole conversation was like, this name is weird and blah, blah, blah. And then I saw people talking about on like message boards, like, what are they going to make a game called Mario Wii and Mario Kart Wii and this, that Wii or whatever? And I'm like, and it was like, yeah, that's impossible. They would never do that. But then they did make like Wii Play and Wii Sports and Mario Kart Wii.
Yeah.
And like we just adjusted to it, and it didn't become weird to call because people thought about how they made Super Mario and Super Metroid, right? And Super Mario Kart.
And those sounded
and added
cool.
Super to things. Yeah, and so it's like they can't do that with the word Wii because that's stupid. And it turned out once the world just adjusted to the name, it wasn't weird to throw Wii into a title.
I mean, there definitely were jokes, but it wasn't damning.
No, it wasn't. Someone was like, "What, are they gonna make a Metroid Wii?" And I'm like, "Oh, I hate that." And they didn't. Obviously, they called it Metroid.
I think they understood what they were targeting when they chose the Wii naming. When it had the Wii, it was obviously for a casual audience. I mean, hardcore games didn't really sell that well on Wii. They might as well have just been like basically GameCube level sales.
It's sad to me.
Yeah, which is why the Switch is like so much better, because it has greater success than the Wii, but actual core games that we think are just actually good get the success they deserve.
Oh yeah,
somewhat.
The Switch to me is just based on my pureness, because I'm a sucker for nostalgia. So based on my nostalgia, it's definitely not my favorite console. But if you were to look at the Switch from an objective perspective, this is the strongest, maybe since the Nintendo era. This is the strongest the Nintendo brand has ever been. And it's the strongest their overall product output has ever been. Like, it's so consistent. The console's great. People like it. It has a unique element. The games library is just insanely good. They've touched almost every single franchise, and there's so few misses in any of those franchises. I don't even know if I can think of one off the top of my head, except Mario Tennis I really hated. Outside of that, I mean, they've just been killing it. You know, it's crazy. And
yeah,
so
I mean,
it really is the best they've almost ever done. You know?
I think you have to think hard on or you have to make an argument, and you can't make a good argument for most games not being like one of the better versions of their series on Switch. Like,
I agree.
You could probably argue that Star Allies is not the best 2D Kirby. I think you'll win that argument, but Kirby and the Forgotten Land might be the best Kirby game ever. It's definitely up there. So
I'm not a big Kirby fan, and I loved that game. I think that game was amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah, it was absolutely incredible.